The fluorescent lights of the employee break room buzzed overhead as Sarai Monroe tied her black apron around her waist. Another long night of serving the rich and powerful was about to begin. At 25, Sarai's hands already showed the wear of someone who had worked twice as long. Small burns from hot plates, dry skin from constant washing, a small scar where a champagne glass had broken in her grip. No drama, no problems. Marcus patted her shoulder. "That's why you're my best server." "So are you ready for tonight?" asked Marcus, the head waiter at Capital Elite Events, one of Washington, D.C.'s most prestigious venues. She pulled out her phone and looked at the photo that served as her wallpaper. Herself and her older sister Danny, arms wrapped around each other, both laughing into the camera. "Be extra attentive. Mr. Beck doesn't like to wait." At 29, he had transformed his father's struggling software company into a tech empire. The business pages called him brilliant. The gossip columns called him cold. The staff at Capital Elite called him demanding. It had been taken 3 years ago, just months before the car accident that took Danny away forever. 4 men in expensive suits were deep in conversation, barely acknowledging her presence as she refilled their glasses. Lucas Beck sat slightly apart from the others, his attention fixed on his phone. "Things getting serious with that model? What's her name?" "Alessandra." Even seated, Sarai could tell he was tall. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his suit obviously custom-made. His face was striking rather than traditionally handsome, all sharp angles and intensity. "The Westfall Foundation Gala is our biggest event of the year. My father needs to mind his own business. Every billionaire and politician in a 100-mile radius will be here. Food poisoning. She can't perform. Richard just wants to see you settled down with someone appropriate." Lucas Beck was watching her, his gaze direct and assessing. "For the Westfall Gala? Impossible!" Marcus ran a hand over his face. "Mrs. Westfall is going to have my head. This is the highlight of the evening." Sarai kept her face carefully blank, but something about his stare made her uncomfortable. "I don't sing anymore, Marcus, you know that." It wasn't the usual way rich men looked at servers, either dismissive or inappropriately interested. Instead, he seemed curious, as if trying to solve a puzzle. Sarai nodded, tucking a loose strand of her dark hair back into her neat bun. "These people won't even really listen. They just want background entertainment while they finish their dessert." "Just another night of being invisible," she said with a small smile that didn't reach her eyes. "That's my girl, but maybe it's time." For the next hour, she continued her rounds, but occasionally she'd feel someone watching her. She had no makeup, no fancy dress, just herself. Each time she'd look up to find Lucas Beck's eyes following her movements. "You'd be saving my job." Sarai moved efficiently between tables, pouring wine and serving appetizers. The guilt crashed over her again. She'd been at an audition when the accident happened. If she'd been home instead of chasing dreams. Most guests barely looked up from their conversations or desserts. She took a deep breath and stepped up to the microphone. By the second line, a few heads had turned. By the third, conversations had stopped. Her voice built in power, filling every corner of the grand ballroom without a single instrument backing her. She stared at her reflection, the severe bun, the plain black uniform, the carefully neutral expression she'd perfected. No explanation. Sarai simply opened her mouth and began to sing. This wasn't a performer looking back at her. This was a survivor, someone who had packed away dreams in exchange for stability. She gave a quick nod, then walked off the stage, her heart pounding. "I've done what you asked." She headed straight for the kitchen, ignoring the stares and whispers that followed her. She had mastered the art of being present without being noticed, eyes lowered, movements quiet, face neutral. The December night was cold, and she pulled her worn coat tighter around her. The bus wouldn't come for another 40 minutes, but she couldn't bear to go back inside. For the first time in 3 years, she felt Danny's presence not as a painful absence, but as a comforting memory. Her gaze landed on table 12, where Lucas Beck sat completely still, his drink forgotten in his hand, his eyes never leaving her face. Then the room erupted in applause. People rose to their feet, some wiping away tears. Mrs. Westfall herself was beaming, clapping enthusiastically. Up close, he was even taller than she'd thought, his presence commanding. She poured everything into the song, her grief, her struggle, her quiet dignity. To the guests in designer clothes and diamond jewelry, she was just another pair of hands bringing food and drinks. He paused, seeming to search for the right word. Extraordinary. She wants to know if you can do another song. If you'll excuse me, I need to catch my bus. As the other staff members chatted excitedly about which celebrities they might see tonight, Sarai stayed quiet. Sarai touched the screen gently. It's freezing and it's late. Another day, another dollar, she whispered to the image. I'm making it work, just like I promised. Old money families clustered together, eyeing the tech millionaires with barely disguised disdain. Everyone who was anyone had come to be seen. The doors to the grand ballroom opened promptly at 7. For the first time, he sounded less sure of himself. That came out wrong. I didn't mean to offend you. By 9 o'clock, the room was packed with Washington's elite. Politicians laughed too loudly at each other's jokes. The memory of singing, of feeling something real for the first time in years, still hummed in her veins. But she pushed it down, just like she always did. Of course, it wasn't about her at all. It was about what she could do for him. She groaned and reached for it blindly, her body aching from yesterday's long shift. You just reminded me why I stopped singing in the first place. And I've got at least 3 business cards from people who want to contact you. I told you, Marcus, it was one time. I'm not interested. My company needs a new sound for our upcoming campaign. Name your price. Table 12 needs more champagne, Marcus murmured as he passed. The Beckman Group. Sarai grabbed a fresh bottle and made her way across the room. She'd heard of Lucas Beck. Everyone in DC had. She approached the table carefully. A rich man who thinks everything has a price tag. As she poured the last glass, she felt eyes on her. Just come in early, okay? We need to talk about this. Thank you, he said, his voice deeper than she expected. Beck. Last night, for just a few minutes, she'd remembered what it felt like to do what she loved. But along with that feeling came all the pain and guilt she'd been running from. She turned to leave. Good night. Sarai nodded slightly, surprised by the acknowledgement. You're welcome, sir. She turned to leave when she heard one of the other men say, So, Lucas, your father mentioned you're bringing someone to the family retreat next month. Lucas's jaw tightened. Come on, man. You're almost 30. No response. He wasn't surprised, but he was intrigued. People didn't ignore him. They didn't walk away from him. They certainly didn't turn down his offers without even hearing the terms. She deleted the message without replying and got up to start her day, pushing away the memory of his intense stare as she sang. I'm not discussing this, Lucas said coldly. Sarai slipped away, relieved to escape the tension at the table, no matter how tempting it might be to peek inside. At 10:30, Marcus grabbed her arm as she was heading to the kitchen. His face was pale with panic. We have a disaster, he hissed. The singer for tonight's entertainment just called. Can't they get someone else? Sarai asked. In an hour. Sarai patted his arm sympathetically and turned to go, but Marcus suddenly gripped her wrist. Wait, he said, his eyes widening. You can sing. Sarai felt her stomach drop. No, no way. I saw that video from Jake's wedding last year. You were amazing. That was different. It was just for fun, for friends. Sarai pulled her arm away. Please, Sarai. I'm begging you. Marcus looked desperate. It's just one song. I can't, Sarai whispered, feeling her throat tighten. Not since Danny. Marcus's expression softened. I know you stopped after your sister died. I know music was your thing together. Sarai shook her head, memories flooding back. Danny driving her to singing lessons, scraping together money for studio time, cheering the loudest at every small gig. 10 minutes, Marcus pleaded. One song. I'll give you a week's paid vacation, please, Sarai. Sarai closed her eyes. What would Danny say? The answer came immediately. Get your butt on that stage, little sister. One song, she finally said. Something simple. No band, no accompaniment. Marcus's face lit up. You're a lifesaver. I'll announce you in 15 minutes. Sarai walked to the employee bathroom in a daze. She pulled the pins from her hair, letting her natural curls fall past her shoulders. "This is for you, Danny," she whispered, and then never again. The small stage at the front of the ballroom looked a million miles away as Marcus tapped on the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a special treat tonight. Please welcome to the stage, Sarai Monroe." A polite smattering of applause followed as Sarai walked up the steps. No introduction. The first notes of amazing grace filled the room, her voice clear and strong despite her racing heart. Sarai kept her eyes closed, letting the familiar melody wash over her. When she opened her eyes near the end of the song, the entire room was silent. Hundreds of faces turned toward her in stunned appreciation. As the final note faded, there was a moment of complete silence, but Sarai barely registered any of it. "Sarai, that was incredible," Marcus exclaimed, catching up to her. "I've never seen anything like it. Mrs. Westfall is thrilled." "No," Sarai said firmly. "We had a deal. One song. But everyone loved it. This could be a big opportunity for you." "I don't want an opportunity." Sarai untied her apron with shaking hands. "I'm going home, Marcus. At least stay until the end of your shift. People are asking about you. Let them ask." Sarai grabbed her coat and purse from her locker. "I'll see you tomorrow." She slipped out through the service entrance, desperate for fresh air. Sarai had only gone a few steps when she heard the door open behind her. "Ms. Monroe." She turned to find Lucas Beck standing there, without a coat despite the cold. "Yes, Mr. Beck?" she asked warily. "That was... thank you." Sarai shifted uncomfortably. "I have a car. Let me drive you home." Sarai gave a short, humorless laugh. "No, thank you." Lucas frowned, clearly not used to being refused. "I'm used to it." "At least let me call you a taxi." "Mr. Beck," Sarai said firmly, "I appreciate the offer, but I don't need your help." Something flashed in his eyes. Surprise, maybe respect. "Everyone has a price, Ms. Monroe. What's yours?" Sarai felt anger rise in her chest. "Excuse me?" "For your voice," he clarified. The anger cooled into disappointment. "My voice isn't for sale, Mr. Wait. You didn't offend me," Sarai said, not looking back. She walked away, feeling his eyes on her back until she turned the corner. Some dreams were better left buried. The next morning, Sarai woke up in her tiny apartment to the sound of her phone ringing. "Hello," she mumbled. "Sarai, it's Marcus. You need to come in early today." She sat up, instantly alert. "Why? Is something wrong?" "Wrong? No. But Mrs. Westfall called this morning, raving about you." Sarai sighed. "There's more," Marcus continued, his voice excited. "Lucas Beck called personally. He wants to meet with you. Tell him I'm not interested." "Sarai, do you know who this man is? What he could do for you?" "I know exactly who he is," she said flatly. Marcus sighed. Sarai hung up and lay back on her bed, staring at the ceiling. Her phone buzzed with a text. Unknown number. "Ms. Monroe, this is Lucas Beck. I'd like to apologize for last night and speak with you about your remarkable talent. Please call me at your convenience." Sarai stared at the message in disbelief. How had he gotten her number? Some doors were better left closed. Across town, in a penthouse apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Potomac, Lucas Beck stood with a coffee cup in his hand, staring at his phone. But Sarai, Monroe had done all three. Lucas took a sip of his coffee, remembering the moment she began to sing, how the room had disappeared, how, for the first time in years, he had felt something cut through the carefully constructed walls around him. His phone rang, and his father's name flashed on the screen. Lucas considered ignoring it, but that would only lead to more calls. "I hear the Westfall Gala was a success. Did you speak with Senator Jenkins about the defense contract?" "Good morning, Father," he answered, his voice cooling instantly. "Lucas? No greeting, no pleasantries, just business as always. Yes, he's on board. As you would know if you listened when I speak. The company needs stability." "Excellent. And Alessandra? Did she make a good impression?" Lucas's jaw tightened. "Alessandra and I ended things last week." Richard Beck sighed heavily. "Lucas, you're 29 years old. It's time you found someone suitable and settled down. When was the last time he'd felt anything so real? The company is doing fine. Sarai moved between tables, taking orders and delivering food with practiced efficiency. Here, unlike at the evening job, she wore a name tag and was expected to smile and chat with customers. It was exhausting in a different way than the night job, but it paid the bills. He looked up as she approached, and a small smile touched his lips. You know what I mean. Beckman Group is a family business. We need to project the right image. Lucas thought of Sarai, of the raw emotion in her voice that had made his chest ache. I have to go, Father. I have a meeting. Sarai took out her notepad, determined to treat him like any other customer. What can I get for you today? He closed the menu. You didn't respond to my message. He handed her the menu. And maybe a few minutes of your time. His father would be furious, but for once, Lucas didn't care. He had more important things on his mind. We're not done discussing this, Lucas. The board meeting is next week and... Lucas hung up, something he never did. If Sarai Monroe wouldn't come to him, he would go to her. The lunchtime rush at Rossini's, a mid-priced Italian restaurant in downtown D.C., was in full swing. Table 7 needs more bread, called Tony, the manager, as Sarai passed the kitchen. She grabbed a basket and headed to the table, freezing when she saw who was sitting there, calmly studying the menu. Behind the confidence and polish, she caught a glimpse of something else, a hint of the same loneliness she carried. Lucas Beck looked different in daylight, still impeccably dressed in what was undoubtedly an expensive suit, but somehow more human. Fair enough. As she approached, he stood up, an old-fashioned courtesy that seemed oddly fitting for him. Lucas Beck was the last person she should be talking to, and I'm still not interested in singing for your company. He represented everything she'd turned her back on. Ambition, dreams, the belief that life could be more than just getting by. But I'd still like to talk to you. Negotiations, contracts, acquisitions, those make sense to me. But this, he gestured between them, this doesn't. Not about business. Just, and I don't know. You have an extraordinary gift. Why are you serving tables instead of performing? That's why I'm here. Talk. Ms. Monroe, he said, as if he'd been expecting her, which, of course, he had. Mr. Beck, she replied, setting down the breadbasket. How did you know I work here? Apology accepted. Sarai's smile faded. Not everyone gets to follow their dreams. Some of us have responsibilities. Is there anything else? I have resources. I should get back to work. Lucas stood as she did. Thank you for your time, Sarai. Sarai asked, genuinely curious, if you ever want to talk or if you need anything at all. For a moment, Sarai saw past the billionaire to the man beneath, someone who, like her, might be going through the motions of life without really living it. But some small, long-buried part of her knew she wouldn't, and despite her best efforts, she couldn't help wondering what she might have seen in him too. Whether that was good or terrifying, she wasn't yet sure. You must hear professional singers all the time. But beyond that, the incident had faded into the background. Sarai was relieved. The last thing she wanted was attention. And no, I'd rather not see him. I didn't have anything to say. What did it matter if Lucas Beck was there or not? Their worlds couldn't be more different. Whatever strange connection she'd felt that night was better left unexplored. Well, you might get your wish. The reservation was made by his assistant, not him personally. Lucas studied her face for a moment. I'll have whatever you recommend. Each night, as she emptied her pockets before bed, she would look at his business card, run her thumb over the embossed lettering, then place it carefully on her nightstand. The event was smaller than the gala, only about 50 people in the room, all wearing sharp suits and discussing market shares and investment rounds. Sarai returned to her drinks, trying to ignore the quickened beat of her heart. It was ridiculous to feel this way. He was just a man, a wealthy, powerful man who lived in a completely different world from hers. Looking up, she saw Lucas Beck standing in the doorway, scanning the room. Yet he still carried himself with that same commanding presence, drawing glances from around the room without seeming to notice them. Fine, but I'm just delivering drinks, nothing else. His eyes found her almost immediately, as if drawn by some invisible force. She could see the tension in his shoulders, the stiffness of his posture. Sarai knocked briefly before entering, finding 6 men seated around a polished table. Lucas sat at the head, his back to the door. The conversation stopped as she entered. He asked, his voice smooth and calculated, "You look familiar. You're the server who sang at the Westfall Gala. Richard Beck." He extended his hand. Lucas's father. Beckman Group? And cold eyes, the man looked her up and down in a way that made her skin crawl. Lucas Beck's company? She looked up to find Lucas standing there, his tie loosened and a weary expression on his face. He has no filter and less tact. The clients were a tech company celebrating a successful product launch, not as prestigious as the Westfall Gala, but still important enough for Marcus to be hovering nervously. Each morning, she would tuck it back into her pocket, telling herself she was just keeping it as a reminder of the strange night when she had sung again. Sarai asked, eager to leave. "The chicken parmesan is popular. Mr. Beck and his senior team have moved there for a discussion." He mentioned a server with an exceptional voice, though he failed to mention other attributes. "Then I'll have that. I'm working, Mr. Beck. When is your break?" "Beckman Group is one of our biggest clients. We have everything we need." Sarai sighed. "Look, I appreciate your interest in my singing, but I'm not interested in whatever you're offering. Last night was a one-time thing." She couldn't shake the feeling that she had just been assessed and categorized, not as a person, but as an asset or liability. The resemblance between father and son was striking in their features, but where Lucas's intensity seemed to hide something vulnerable. Richard's held only cold ambition. "Why?" The direct question caught her off guard. "Yes, he hosts quarterly events here for his executive team, though he usually doesn't attend himself." He shot her a knowing look. "Hoping to see your admirer again?" "That's personal." Lucas nodded slowly. Something in his tone made Sarai look at him more carefully. "My break is at 2, she said finally. 15 minutes. A genuine smile spread across his face, transforming his features. "I'll be here." As Sarai walked away, she wondered what she was getting herself into. But for some reason, she found herself watching the clock, wondering what exactly the billionaire wanted from the waitress, who had walked away from him twice already. At exactly 2 o'clock, Sarai untied her apron and walked to the small table in the corner where Lucas Beck was waiting, his meal long finished, a cup of coffee in front of him. "Thank you for agreeing to speak with me," he said as they both sat down. 15 minutes, Sarai reminded him. "I understand." Lucas leaned forward slightly. "I wanted to apologize properly for how I approached you last night. I'm not good at this." "At what?" "Talking to servers." "At talking to people who interest me." The honesty in his voice surprised her. "Business, I understand. What exactly is this, Mr. Beck?" "Lucas," he corrected. Sarai couldn't help but smile a little at his directness. "Well, Lucas, you've apologized." Lucas looked at her thoughtfully. The question hit too close to home. "Like what?" "That's getting personal again." Lucas nodded, accepting the boundary. "Fair enough. But I hope you'll let me hear you sing again someday." "Why?" "Yes, but none of them made me feel..." He paused, searching for the right words. "None of them made me feel anything real." The simple admission hung in the air between them. "My break's almost over," she said softly. Lucas nodded and reached into his pocket, pulling out a business card. "My personal number is on the back." Sarai hesitated, then took the card. "Of course." The sound of her name in his deep voice sent an unexpected shiver down her spine. "Goodbye, Lucas." As she walked back to the kitchen, Sarai slipped the card into her pocket, telling herself she would throw it away later. For the first time in 3 years, something had cracked in the careful walls she'd built around herself. All she knew was that Lucas Beck had seen something in her that she'd thought was long dead. A week passed without Sarai contacting Lucas. At Capital Elite, things had returned to normal. Mrs. Westfall had sent a generous tip and a note, thanking Sarai for saving the evening. Friday evening found her at her usual spot behind the bar at Capital Elite. preparing drink trays for a corporate event. Everything needs to be perfect, he reminded the staff for the 10th time. Sarai nearly dropped the glass she was holding. Marcus nodded, distracted by a slightly crooked centerpiece. "He's not my admirer," Sarai said, too quickly. Marcus laughed. Sarai felt an unexpected twinge of disappointment, which she immediately pushed away. As the evening progressed, Sarai kept herself busy at the bar, leaving the table service to other staff members. She was mixing a batch of martinis when she felt it, that same sensation of being watched that she'd experienced at the gala. He looked tired, Sarai thought. There were shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there before, and a tension in his shoulders that spoke of stress. Lucas nodded slightly in her direction, then moved to join a group of executives. An hour later, as the event was in full swing, Marcus appeared at her side. "Sarai, I need you to take these drinks to the private meeting room," he said, gesturing to a tray of expensive scotch. "Can't someone else do it?" "Everyone else is busy with the main room besides," Marcus added with a smirk. "He asked for you specifically." Sarai's eyes narrowed. What did he say exactly? He said, "Would Miss Monroe mind bringing these to the Cedar Room?" Very polite, very specific. With a sigh, Sarai picked up the tray. The Cedar Room was the smallest of Capital Elite's meeting spaces, tucked away at the end of a quiet hallway. "Your drinks, gentlemen," she said professionally, setting down the tray and beginning to distribute the glasses. "Thank you, Ms. Monroe," Lucas said without turning around. As she placed the last glass in front of an older executive with silver hair, "Have we met before?" "I don't believe so, sir," Sarai replied, taking a step back. "Wait," the man said, his eyes lighting with recognition. Sarai hesitated, then briefly shook his hand. "Sarai Monroe. So you're the one my son has been talking about." Richard's smile didn't reach his eyes. Lucas's head snapped around, his expression darkening. "That's enough, father." Richard raised an eyebrow but said nothing more, taking a sip of his scotch instead. The tension in the room was palpable. "Will there be anything else, gentlemen?" "No, thank you," Lucas said, his eyes meeting hers briefly. There was something like an apology in them. Sarai nodded and quickly left the room, feeling Richard Beck's calculating gaze follow her out. Later, as the event was winding down and most of the guests had departed, Sarai was cleaning up the bar when she sensed someone approaching. "I apologize for my father," he said without preamble. "No need to." "To apologize," Sarai replied, continuing to wipe down the counter. "I'm used to how people like that see people like me." "Is that how you see me, too?" She remembered the way he had looked at her when she sang, the genuine interest when they talked at the restaurant. "People like that?" Lucas winced slightly. The question made Sarai pause. Was it fair to lump Lucas in with his father? "I don't know what to make of you," she admitted. "You haven't used my number." "I didn't think you wanted me to." "I didn't say that." Lucas smiled slightly. "No, you didn't." He leaned against the bar. "Have dinner with me tomorrow night." It wasn't quite a question, but it wasn't quite a command either. Sarai raised an eyebrow. "Mario's on 8th Street, 7 o'clock. I have to work." "Sunday, then." Sarai hesitated. Everything about this was a bad idea. They were from different worlds. She had sworn off music, and he seemed to want nothing more than to hear her sing again. And yet, not his money or his power, but the glimpses of the man beneath all that, someone who, like her, seemed to be searching for something real in a world full of pretense. She hadn't been on a date, or whatever this was, in years. Her wardrobe consisted mainly of work clothes, jeans, and t-shirts. Nothing suitable for Mario's, one of DC's most exclusive restaurants. "It's dinner. Let's start with that." "Okay," she heard herself say. "Sunday?" "Girl, who are you going with that can afford Mario's?" The smile that spread across Lucas's face transformed his features, making him look younger, less burdened. "I'll pick you up at 7. "What happened to I'm never dating again, especially not rich guys?" "I'll meet you somewhere," Sarai countered, not ready to have him see where she lived. Lucas nodded, accepting the boundary. Lucas straightened up. Tasha's voice softened. "Sarai, this is the first time you've shown interest in anyone since everything happened with Danny. A dinner I'm going to have to cancel because I have nothing to wear. Simple, elegant, but with enough wow factor to make Billionaire Boy realize what he's dealing with. As a personal stylist for a department store, she had access to clothes Sarai could never afford. "I'm happy for you." Surprised, but happy. Tasha squeezed her shoulders. "It's been 3 years, Sarai. Danny wouldn't want you punishing yourself forever." "I should go. Giving up music, working 2 jobs you hate, turning down every opportunity that comes your way." Tasha handed her a small clutch purse. "Now go have dinner with a handsome billionaire who seems to see something special in you, and if it turns into something more, well, Danny would be the first one cheering you on." Tasha's voice was gentle but firm. "Danny was your biggest fan. She'd be heartbroken to see you living like this." "The car is waiting." He paused, then added, "I'm glad you kept my card." "That's pretty fancy for a first date," Sarai said, then immediately wished she could take back the word date. "I'm more of a burger joint kind of girl." "Is that what this is?" Lucas asked softly. "It's just dinner," she repeated, but this time with less conviction. The fact that he was willing to change plans based on her comfort level was... "I've always wondered what $100 steak tastes like." Unexpected. The maitre d' led her to a table in a quiet corner where Lucas was already waiting. He stood as she approached, his eyes widening slightly as he took in her appearance. "Honestly, pretty much like a $50 steak. You're paying for the ambiance and the snobbery." "Manager said I could borrow it for the night." Tasha pushed Sarai toward the bathroom. Lucas shrugged slightly. "I haven't actually dated much, not properly anyway. Women who wanted what I could give them. Status, connections, financial security." His expression turned wry. "When you're in my position, it's hard to know if someone wants you or what you represent." The dress fit perfectly, highlighting her curves without being too revealing. Sarai sat down, fighting the urge to fidget with her napkin. "This place is... something." There was an intensity to Lucas's focus that was both flattering and unsettling. "I work 2 jobs to pay the bills. Pretty ordinary life. No one who sings the way you do has an ordinary anything." When he looked at her, she felt truly seen, not as a server or a potential singer, but as herself. "I used to sing. Professionally, I mean." Instead, he asked, "Were you close?" "My sister died, car accident. After that, I just couldn't anymore. Or trying to, anyway. Small gigs, demos, auditions, the usual struggling artist story." Sarai found herself wanting to explain, despite her usual reluctance to discuss Danny. "Danny had bought me the bus ticket with money she'd been saving for months. She was driving home from her night shift when it happened. Head-on collision with a drunk driver. Our parents weren't really in the picture. Danny raised me from the time I was 12. She worked 3 jobs to keep us afloat, but she always made time for my music, singing my heart out while my sister was taking her last breath. Tell me something real about Lucas Beck, not the billionaire CEO." "I was 11 when my mother left," he finally said. "No warning, no explanation. She just disappeared from our lives. My father threw himself into the business and I became part of that business, an extension of himself. By the time I got the call and made it to the hospital, she was gone. I built my first app when I was 15, sold it for enough to buy my first car. That felt good, having something that was mine, not my father's. Drove me to lessons, scraped together money for studio time, sat in the front row of every performance, no matter how small." Tasha had styled her hair in loose curls and applied makeup that emphasized her eyes. The facts were stated without pride or boasting, just as information. "I learned early that emotions were a liability. Success was the only metric that mattered. I don't think about it in those terms. Now shower, and let's make you gorgeous." Sarai gestured to the elegant restaurant around them. "I told you I thought it was expected. I wanted to impress you. If you prefer burgers, why the 5-star treatment?" Sarai was grateful for the interruption. She wasn't sure why she was pushing Lucas like this, asking questions that were probably too personal for a first date. Sarai was surprised to discover that despite his wealth and privilege, Lucas had simple tastes in many ways. He preferred quiet evenings at home to lavish parties, classic novels to business books, and claimed the best meal he'd ever had was a burger from a roadside stand during a rare road trip in college. But something about him made her want to see past the polished exterior to the real person underneath. Striking to meet someone who couldn't care less about what I could offer. Sarai felt heat rise to her cheeks. Dinner it is. Does it make you happy? As he walked away, Sarai wondered what she was getting herself into. I still don't know why I agreed to do it. Lucas Beck represented everything she had turned her back on. Ambition, dreams, the spotlight. Being around him made her remember things she had tried hard to forget. And yet something about him pulled at her. Sunday evening arrived too quickly. Sarai stood in front of her small closet, feeling increasingly panicked. Her phone rang, and she was relieved to see her best friend's name on the screen. And yet something about him made her want to lower the walls she'd built so carefully. "Tasha, I need help," she said without preamble. "I have dinner at Mario's in 2 hours and nothing to wear." "Mario's?" Tasha's voice rose in surprise. Sarai hesitated. "Lucas Beck." There was a moment of shocked silence, then an explosion of questions. "The Lucas Beck, billionaire tech guy, Lucas Beck. How? When?" "It's not a date," Sarai insisted, though she wasn't entirely convinced herself. "We just connected. And now we're having dinner." "Uh-huh. And I'm the Queen of England." "Don't get ahead of yourself. It's just dinner." Sarai sighed, looking at her pitiful options. "Don't you dare cancel. I'm coming over with reinforcements. Be there in 20. True to her word, Tasha arrived at Sarai's apartment 20 minutes later, carrying a garment bag and a makeup case. "This is too much," Sarai protested, as Tasha unzipped the bag to reveal a simple but elegant black dress. "It's the floor sample." An hour later, Sarai hardly recognized the woman in the mirror. "There," Tasha said, stepping back to admire her work. Sarai felt a flutter of nerves. "This is crazy, Tasha. What am I doing? He lives in a different world." "So? Maybe it's time you stepped out of the box you've put yourself in." The mention of her sister brought a familiar ache to Sarai's chest. "I'm not punishing myself." "Really? Because from where I'm standing, that's exactly what you're doing." Sarai turned away, tears threatening to ruin her makeup. "I was singing when she needed me. I wasn't there. You can't keep blaming yourself for being at an audition when the accident happened. It was just terrible timing, not your fault." Sarai took a deep breath, trying to quiet the guilt that always rose when she thought about moving forward with her life. Tasha smiled knowingly. "Then why are your hands shaking?" Mario's was everything Sarai expected. Elegant, understated, and intimidating. "You look beautiful," he said simply, pulling out her chair. "Thank you." Lucas smiled, seeming to understand her discomfort. "Too much?" "A little," she admitted. "We could go somewhere else." The offer surprised her. She had expected Lucas Beck to be the type of man who made reservations at exclusive restaurants and expected his dates to be impressed. "No, this is fine," she said. Lucas laughed, a warm sound that transformed his usually serious face. Sarai felt herself relax a little. "Then why bring me here?" "I thought it was expected." "What does that mean?" "It means I've had relationships that were convenient or strategic." Sarai could understand that in a way. "That sounds lonely." "It can be." Lucas's eyes met hers. "That's why it was so—" "I walked away from you twice," Sarai reminded him with a small smile. "3 times, actually. You didn't use my number. Yet here we are." "Here we are," Lucas agreed, raising his water glass in a small toast. The waiter arrived to take their orders, and Sarai was grateful for the interruption. Once they were alone again, Lucas leaned forward slightly. "Tell me about yourself, Sarai Monroe. Not the server, not the singer." "There's not much to tell." Sarai took a sip of water. "I grew up in Philadelphia, moved to D.C. 3 years ago." "I don't believe that for a second." Lucas's gaze was steady. Sarai looked down at her plate. "What happened?" The question was gentle, but Sarai felt the familiar tightness in her chest. Lucas didn't offer platitudes or empty sympathy, which Sarai appreciated. "She was everything to me." "She sounds remarkable." "She was." Sarai smiled sadly. The day of the accident, I was at an audition in New York. Big opportunity. Lucas reached across the table and briefly touched her hand. I'm sorry. I was on stage when she died, Sarai continued, the words coming more easily than she expected. And you haven't sung since? The Westfall Gala was the first time in 3 years. Sarai met his eyes. I'm glad you did, Lucas said softly. Your voice, it woke something in me I thought was long dead. The simple admission hung in the air between them. Sarai felt a connection to this man that defied logic. They were strangers from different worlds. Your turn, she said, wanting to shift the focus away from herself. Lucas was quiet for a moment, as if deciding how much to share. That sounds hard for a child. It was what it was. Lucas's expression was carefully neutral, but Sarai could see the old pain beneath. Is that why you're so successful now? Trying to prove something to your father? Lucas looked surprised by the question, then thoughtful. Maybe, or maybe I'm just good at what I do. He smiled slightly. And now? Now I run a global tech company with over 5,000 employees. We're valued at just under $11 billion. That's not what I meant, Sarai said. I meant, how does it feel now? All that success, all that money. Lucas looked startled, as if no one had ever asked him that before. Maybe you should. Their food arrived, temporarily halting the conversation. As they ate, the conversation shifted to lighter topics, favorite books, movies, places they'd traveled. So why all this? Lucas looked slightly embarrassed. I'm more impressed that you're willing to admit that, Sarai said with a smile. Most men with your advantages would never acknowledge they were trying to impress a waitress. And I'm not trying to impress you because I want something from you, and the desire to reach across the table and take his hand. I'm sorry. I need to take this. It's my father. I'm trying to impress you because you're the first person in a very long time who makes me feel like maybe there's more to life than quarterly reports and board meetings. You're not just a waitress, Sarai. Lucas's voice was serious again. There was a tension in his jaw that hadn't been there before. Just business. Lucas signaled for the check. I apologize, but I need to cut our evening short. There's a situation at the office that requires my attention. Whatever connection they had been building over dinner seemed to recede as Lucas Beck, CEO, took over. The simple honesty of his words caught Sarai off guard. For a moment she couldn't speak, caught between the urge to run away. I'll have my driver take you home. He saw us talking at the event, and now he's creating a crisis to see what I'll prioritize. Before she could decide, Lucas's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and frowned. Sarai nodded, watching as Lucas stepped away from the table to answer the call. His posture changed almost immediately, shoulders squaring, expression hardening. There will be a next time, Sarai, if you'll allow it. When he returned to the table a few minutes later, the easy rapport between them had shifted. Everything okay? Sarai asked. Fine. For showing me a glimpse of something real. Just before she got in, he hesitated, then leaned down and kissed her cheek. Despite the abrupt ending to their evening, she felt lighter than she had in years. For the first time since losing Danny, she had shared her story without feeling overwhelmed by guilt. On a Sunday night? The tech world doesn't respect weekends. His smile was tight, professional. Sarai felt a flicker of disappointment, quickly followed by anger at herself for feeling that way. What had she expected? Her name is Sarai Monroe, and my personal life is none of your concern. That a billionaire CEO would put his business on hold for a dinner with a server. That's not necessary, she said, reaching for her purse. I can get myself home. I've worked too hard building this company to have its reputation tarnished by your diversions. The next Mrs. Beckman to stand beside you at charity galas and board meetings. I needed to discuss the Jensen contract before tomorrow's meeting. There was no emergency and I'm going home. Richard stood up, his tone hardening. Do you have any idea how it looks when the CEO of Beckman Group is seen getting cozy with the help? Maybe it's time I decided for myself what matters. Lucas looked at her for a long moment, then his expression softened. He hadn't thought that far ahead, had only known that being with Sarai made him feel something he hadn't felt in years, maybe ever. As he waited for a response, Lucas realized he was more nervous about a simple text message than he had been about multi-million-dollar negotiations. Lucas pulled out his phone and typed a message to Sarai. "I'm sorry, Sarai. I was enjoying our evening more than I can express. This isn't how I wanted it to end." The sincerity in his voice melted some of her disappointment. "It's okay, I understand. Don't let a pretty face and a nice voice distract you from what matters." And that, he realized, was both exhilarating and terrifying. Or were you too busy whining and dining that server girl to remember your responsibilities? "No, you don't." Lucas reached across the table and took her hand. "My father is testing me." Lucas never flaunted his wealth, though it was always there in the background. The sleek car that would sometimes pick her up, the expensive watch on his wrist, the way doors seemed to magically open wherever they went. "Men like you don't date women like me without an agenda." "What kind of men do you think I am? And what kind of women do you think you are?" But he wore his privilege lightly, seeming more comfortable in a corner booth at Max's Burgers than at the upscale restaurants he frequented for business. Lunch at casual diners, walks through the quieter parks of DC, and late-night conversations when Lucas would call after finishing work. He respected her schedule, never expecting her to drop shifts for him, sometimes even bringing takeout to Rossini's when she had a short break. "I meant what I said. I want to see you again. Best burgers in DC. How about lunch tomorrow? A real burger this time, no five-star pretension. Say yes." "And you're choosing the business," Sarai said, trying to keep the hurt from her voice. "I'm choosing to deal with this quickly so that next time there won't be an interruption." Lucas squeezed her hand gently. Lucas squeezed her hand, not for his money or his power, but for the man beneath all that, the one who listened intently when she spoke, who remembered small details about her life, who looked at her like she was something precious. "You're so much more interesting than that." She had given him her address a week earlier, but he had never been inside. When she opened the door, she could see the tension in his face. Lucas entered, glancing around her small but tidy apartment. "I'm sorry for not calling first. I just needed to see you." Lucas took her hand. "I'm dating Sarai Monroe, who happens to serve tables, just like you're not dating a CEO. Board meeting. My father decided to announce his retirement." She challenged him, questioned him, made him laugh. She never treated him with the deference he'd grown accustomed to, never agreed with him just because of who he was. And most importantly, she seemed to see the man he wanted to be, not just the man his father had shaped him into. "You're dating Lucas Beck, who happens to run a company." I said I wouldn't be pressured into a relationship for business reasons. Sarai led him to her worn but comfortable couch. "My father accused me of jeopardizing his legacy for a temporary infatuation." What happened? Not for a business deal or a product launch, but for the simple pleasure of spending time with someone who saw him as a person, not a position. "The board has concerns about my commitment to the company's future. They want stability, continuity." Lucas rose and moved toward her. "Sarai, what I feel for you is more real than anything I've felt in my life." Lucas reached for her hands. "Before I met you, my life was nothing but work. I was my father's son, Beckman Group's CEO, but never just Lucas." The words seemed to surprise Lucas as much as Sarai. "I've been thinking about this a lot lately, about what I want versus what's expected of me." Despite her better judgment, Sarai found herself nodding. "I'd like that. My father has suggested Alessandra Winters would be a suitable choice. Her father owns our biggest distribution partner. You'd be the reason I finally build something worth having." She was falling in love with Lucas Beck, had probably been falling since the moment he looked at her after she sang. And sooner or later, reality would catch up to them. The realization was both wonderful and terrifying. "Dinner tonight?" He has very specific ideas about who I should be with. I've seen how your father looks at me like I'm some gold digger who's manipulating his son. The kind of woman who makes a suitable corporate wife. He's your father. That company is your life's work." The smile that spread across Lucas's face was worth the admission. "Good. I'll call you tomorrow." As they left the restaurant, Lucas insisted on seeing her safely into a taxi despite her protests. "Thank you for tonight," he said softly. Unlike the careful kiss on the cheek after their first date, this was real and deep and full of longing. Sarai felt herself respond, all her doubts temporarily silenced by the undeniable connection between them. As the taxi pulled away, Sarai touched her cheek where his lips had been, and for the first time in a very long time, she was looking forward to tomorrow. Across town, in the gleaming headquarters of Beckman Group, Lucas stood in his father's office, his expression carefully neutral. "It's late and we both have work tomorrow." "There was no emergency, was there?" he asked coldly. Richard Beck looked up from his desk unperturbed. "It could have waited until morning." "Could it?" Richard raised an eyebrow. Lucas felt a surge of anger but kept his voice level. "Everything about you is my concern, Lucas. You're the face of this company. I don't care how it looks." "Well, you should." Richard moved to the bar in the corner of his office and poured himself a drink. "Sarai is not a diversion." "No?" Richard's smile was cold. "Then what is she? A potential wife? The future mother of your children?" The questions hit Lucas harder than he expected. "This conversation is over," he said finally. "Lucas." His father's voice stopped him at the door. "You have responsibilities. To this company, to our family name." Lucas turned to look at his father, seeing clearly for the first time the emptiness behind the ambition, as he walked out of the building into the cool night air. "I'm sorry again about tonight. The emergency was my father being my father." His finger hovered over the send button for a moment before pressing it. A minute later, his phone buzzed. "Yes, but only if you promise no business calls." Lucas smiled, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. "Promise," he typed back. 1 p.m. at Max's on 14th Street. As his driver pulled up to the curb, Lucas felt something he hadn't experienced in a very long time: anticipation. For the first time in years, Lucas Beck was looking forward to something that had nothing to do with Beckman Group. Over the next few weeks, Sarai and Lucas fell into a routine that defied both their expectations. For Sarai, it was unlike any relationship she'd ever had. "I keep waiting for the catch," Sarai admitted one evening as they sat on a bench overlooking the Potomac. Lucas looked at her with that direct gaze that always made her feel like he could see right through her. "I know what I mean. Billionaires don't date servers." "I'm not dating a server." Sarai wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that it could be that simple, but experience had taught her that nothing ever was. "Have you told your father about us?" she asked. A shadow crossed Lucas's face. "Not in so many words." "That's a no, then." "My father and we have a complicated relationship." Lucas sighed. "And I'm not it," Sarai said, trying to keep the hurt from her voice. "No, you're not." Despite her misgivings, Sarai found herself falling for Lucas. For Lucas, being with Sarai was like breathing fresh air after being underwater. One night, after a particularly long day at Beckman Group, Lucas showed up at Sarai's apartment unannounced. "Bad day?" she asked, stepping aside to let him in. "The worst." "It's okay." Lucas ran a hand through his hair, messing up the perfect style. "Isn't that a good thing? You'll be taking over completely, right?" "That's the plan. But he's set conditions." Lucas's jaw tightened. Sarai had a sinking feeling she knew where this was going. "What kind of conditions?" "They think I need to settle down, present the image of a stable family man." Lucas wouldn't meet her eyes. The words hit Sarai like a physical blow. "I see." "No, you don't." Lucas finally looked at her, his eyes intense. "I told them no." "How did that go over?" "About as well as you'd expect." Lucas laughed without humor. Sarai stood up, needing some distance. "Maybe he's right. Maybe that's all this is." "You know it's not. We've only known each other a few weeks. And in those weeks, you've made me question everything I thought I knew about what matters." Sarai wanted to believe him, but fear held her back. "Your world and mine don't mix, Lucas. I don't care what he thinks." "You should. It doesn't have to be." Sarai shook her head. "I won't be the reason you throw away everything you've built." "You wouldn't be." Lucas cupped her face gently. Before she could respond, Lucas leaned down and kissed her. When they finally pulled apart, Lucas rested his forehead against hers. "I should go," he said quietly. Sarai nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Lucas kissed her once more, softly, then left. the door closing quietly behind him. Alone in her apartment, Sarai touched her lips, still feeling the pressure of his kiss. Because no matter what Lucas said, she knew the truth. Their worlds were fundamentally incompatible. The next morning, Sarai was cleaning tables at Rossini's when her phone buzzed with a message from Lucas. Meeting with potential investors all day, thinking of you. Cook. The simple domesticity of the offer made Sarai smile. She was typing a response when Tasha burst through the door of the restaurant, waving a magazine. Sarai Monroe, Tasha's voice carried across the nearly empty dining room. When were you going to tell me about this? Tell you about what? Sarai asked, confused. Tasha slapped the magazine down on the table, Society and Power, one of DC's glossiest gossip publications. On the cover was a photo of Sarai and Lucas, walking hand in hand through Rock Creek Park. She flipped through the magazine with shaking hands, seeing her life laid out in glossy photos and sensationalized captions. They had even found a picture of her and Danny together, with a paragraph speculating about her tragic past and how it had captured the heart of DC's most eligible bachelor. What is this? The headline read, Beckman's Mystery Woman. Who is the server who stole Lucas Beck's heart? Sarai felt the blood drain from her face. That's what I want to know. Tasha pointed at the magazine. There's a whole spread inside, or at least semi-famous in a dating a billionaire kind of way. Pictures of you two at restaurants, at the park, outside your apartment building. They're going to demand a retraction of the more personal details. What does your father think about all this? He asked without preamble when she answered. He's concerned about the company's image. Lucas, they have pictures of my sister. I have to go. I need to think. They're talking about her death like it's some juicy backstory. They've dug up everything about you, where you work, where you're from, even old videos of you singing from before Danny died, Sarai finished, her voice hollow. Tasha leaned forward. The question is, do you love him? Lucas's name flashed on the screen. Tasha squeezed her hand. Danny would want you to be happy, Sarai. She wouldn't want you punishing yourself forever. This was never going to work. People notice. Tasha's expression softened. Are you okay? The window rolled down to reveal not Lucas but his father, Richard Beck. Not of the publicity or Richard Beck or any of that. She got into the car, sitting as far from Richard as the back seat would allow. You're scared of letting yourself be happy because you feel like you don't deserve it. Richard's smile didn't reach his eyes. I thought it was time you and I had a frank conversation. This is a lot. They're turning my life, Danny's death, into entertainment. And it's only going to get worse. They had never said those words to each other, had known each other for barely a month. And yet, this can't be happening, Sarai whispered. Richard's voice was calm, businesslike. $1 million, no taxes, no strings attached, enough for you to pursue your music career, help your friends, live comfortably for years. All I ask in return is that you end your relationship with my son. Oh, it's happening all right. Tasha sat down across from her. You're famous, girl. But we've been so careful, just normal places, no big public events. You're dating one of the richest men in the country. Sarai's voice was quiet but steady. Because I'm a server. Because I don't come from money. Before Sarai could answer, her phone rang. Richard's bluntness was almost refreshing after his smooth manipulations. In his cold eyes, she saw Lucas's future. Decades of calculating every move, measuring success only in dollars and acquisitions, sacrificing personal happiness for corporate gain. I'll find my own way home. Sarai handed the folder back to him. I think you've spent so long seeing people as assets or liabilities that you've forgotten they're human beings, including your son. You may care for my son, Ms. Monroe, I don't doubt that, but if you truly care for him, you'll consider what's best for his future. She pulled out her phone and called Lucas. For Lucas's sake, if not your own. After that magazine article, and then you not returning my calls. Sarai led him to the couch. Before you do anything, we need to talk about whether your father might be right. But something happened that you should know about. About whether I belong in your world. Sarai met his eyes directly. Look at what happened today. One magazine article, and suddenly my private life is public property. My sister's death is gossip for strangers, and it's only going to get worse, isn't it? I've made Beckman Group more profitable than it's ever been. If they want to replace me because of who I choose to date, they're fools, she asked when he answered. We need to talk. I hate it, but it's part of my life. We both know this relationship has no future, Ms. Monroe. Lucas may be infatuated now, but eventually reality will set in. He said it was for my own good, and yours. Lucas has worked his entire life to build Beckman Group into what it is today. I've just been following the path he laid out for me. What's up? Sarai asked, moving to the kitchen for privacy. Lucas reached up to touch her face. And what I want is you, Sarai. Not just for now, but for... I just got a call from Elena Maxwell's agent. Sarai knew they were approaching a turning point, a decision that would change both their lives irrevocably. She saw that magazine article about you and Lucas, found those old videos of you singing, and she wants to meet you. Says you have raw talent and authentic emotion that can't be taught. Well, for as long as you'll have me. Lucas's expression softened. Until I met you, I never questioned that path. Elena Maxwell was a legend in the music industry, known for turning promising singers into superstars. Her people called our office looking for your contact information. I told them I'd pass along the message. Marcus paused. Sarai, this is huge. This is what you always wanted, isn't it? Before... Now I'm not so sure it's the one I want. Apparently, Elena Maxwell saw that magazine article and some old videos of me singing. She wants to meet with me tomorrow. The board is already expressing concerns about his judgment. If he continues this dalliance with you, he risks losing everything he's worked for. I don't know if I'm ready to sing again. Not professionally. Richard gestured to the magazine on the seat between them. She believed in me more than I believed in myself. Lucas took her hand. Sarai, I've only heard you sing once, and it changed something in me. Imagine what you could do if you shared that gift with the world. Me figuring out what I really... Lucas's voice was dangerously quiet. $1 million? Tomorrow at her studio downtown, 1 p.m. What have you got to lose? The publicity is only beginning. Every detail of your life will be scrutinized. The Beckman name means something in this town. Every past relationship, every mistake, every failure. By the time she left work, she felt raw and exposed, as if the carefully constructed walls around her private life had been suddenly torn down. Have you seen it? Tasha just showed me. I know. I'm so sorry, Sarai. Lucas's voice was tight with anger. I've already called my lawyers. It won't matter. It's already out there. Sarai closed her eyes, trying to steady herself. There was a telling pause. Of course he is. Sarai, please don't worry about my father. This will blow over. But Sarai knew better. In her experience, things didn't just blow over. They exploded, leaving damage in their wake. Don't shut me out, Lucas said quietly. Not now. I'm not. I need some time. After hanging up, Sarai looked at Tasha, who had been pretending not to listen. What am I doing, Tasha? Why not? Because he's rich and you're not? Because his daddy doesn't approve? Girl, this isn't the 1800s. The question caught Sarai off guard. Did she love Lucas? I think I could, she admitted. If I let myself. Then let yourself. This isn't about punishment, it's about reality. Sarai gestured to the magazine. Look at this. Tasha was quiet for a moment, then said, You know what I think. I think you're scared. The words hit too close to home. Sarai turned away, blinking back tears. I have to get back to work. Just think about what I said, Tasha called after her. And call your man back, he sounds worried about you. The rest of Sarai's shift passed in a blur. Customers kept giving her curious looks, some even asking if she was that girl from the magazine. She had just reached the bus stop when a familiar black car pulled up beside her. Ms. Monroe, he said smoothly, may I offer you a ride? Every instinct told Sarai to walk away, but curiosity won out. I assumed Lucas would send his car, not that you would come yourself, she said. Lucas doesn't know I'm here. About what? About my son's future. And yours. Richard handed her a folder. Open it. Warily, Sarai did as he asked. Inside was a check made out to her for $1 million. "What is this?" she asked, though she already knew. "An opportunity." Sarai stared at the check, a surge of anger rising in her chest. "You think you can buy me off?" "I think I'm offering you a fair deal. If you think that scares me, you don't know me at all." "Perhaps not, but I know my son." Richard's voice hardened. Sarai felt sick. "So you're using his company against him?" "I'm being realistic. Lucas is not just any man, Ms. Monroe. He has responsibilities, obligations. And I would tarnish it? Because you don't belong in his world." Sarai looked down at the check again, then back at Richard Beck. "You know what I think, Mr. Beck." Richard's expression didn't change, but something flashed in his eyes. Anger, perhaps, or surprise that she hadn't immediately taken the money. "The offer remains open," he said, tucking the folder into his jacket. "Consider it carefully." "Stop the car, please," Sarai said. As she walked away from the idling car, Sarai felt a strange mix of emotions. Anger at Richard's presumption, fear that he might be right about her place in Lucas's world, but also a growing resolve. "Can you come over tonight?" Lucas arrived at Sarai's apartment an hour later, looking concerned. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine." She told him about the encounter with his father, watching Lucas's expression shift from surprise to disbelief to cold anger. "He tried to pay you to leave me." Sarai nodded. "I'll kill him," Lucas muttered, standing up and pacing the small living room. "This time he's gone too far." "Lucas, wait." Sarai caught his arm. "Right? About buying you off like some kind of—" "No, not about the money." Lucas sat back down, taking her hands in his. "Probably yes. Being with me means dealing with public scrutiny." "And the company? Your father made it sound like the board is already questioning your judgment because of me." "Let them question." Lucas's jaw set in a stubborn line. "But this company is your life's work." "No, it's my father's life's work." Sarai felt a surge of both hope and fear. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that for the first time I'm thinking about what I want, not what's expected of me." The words hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning. "Lucas, Her phone rang, interrupting the moment. Sarai glanced at it, ready to ignore the call, then froze when she saw the name on the screen. "I need to take this," she said, standing up. "It's Marcus, from Capital Elite." Lucas nodded, looking slightly disappointed at the interruption. "Marcus." "Sarai, thank God." Marcus sounded excited. "You are not going to believe this. Who?" "Elena Maxwell, the music producer, the one who discovered Janelle Carter and Marcus Williams." Sarai gripped the counter for support, feeling suddenly lightheaded. "This is a joke, right?" "No joke. Before Danny died, before Sarai had packed away her dreams along with her grief." "I don't know, Marcus. I haven't really sung in years. Except at the Westfall Gala, where you brought the house down." "Look, just meet with her." "What indeed?" Sarai glanced back at Lucas, who was watching her with concern, clearly able to tell something significant was happening. "I'll think about it," she told Marcus before hanging up. "Everything okay?" Lucas asked as she returned to the living room. Sarai sat beside him, still processing what Marcus had told her. "That was my manager from Capital Elite." Lucas's eyes widened. "Elena Maxwell? The producer? Sarai, that's incredible." "Is it? But it's what you always wanted, isn't it? Before your sister died?" Sarai nodded, feeling tears prick her eyes. "Danny always said I'd make it someday." "Then maybe this is her way of still believing in you." "What about us? If I start singing again, if by some miracle it leads somewhere, that's just one more complication. Or maybe it's exactly what we both need." Lucas smiled. "You back on stage where you belong. Want from life besides making my father proud." For the first time in years, Sarai allowed herself to imagine a different future, one where she wasn't defined by loss and guilt, where she could honor Danny's memory by living fully rather than hiding from her dreams. "I'm scared," she admitted, "of singing again." She trailed off, not quite ready to say the words out loud. "Of everything, of letting myself want things again, of letting myself love." Lucas seemed to understand. He pulled her close, holding her as if she were something precious. Whatever you decide about meeting Elena Maxwell, I'm here, and whatever happens with my father, with the company, we'll figure it out together. But Sarai took a deep breath. I want you to come with me, if that's okay. Sarai looked up at him, seeing the sincerity in his eyes. Despite all the reasons this shouldn't work, their different backgrounds, his father's disapproval, the public scrutiny, she couldn't deny what she felt for this man. She whispered, "What if I try to sing and nothing comes out?" "Okay," she said softly. "I'll meet with her. And Mr. Beck, this is an unexpected pleasure." Lucas's smile was like sunrise. "Really?" "Really. I saw that video from the Westfall Gala. A friend was there and recorded it on her phone. Then I found those older clips of you performing in Philadelphia. I haven't really sung in years," she admitted, "just that one time at the gala." Elena gestured to a microphone set up in the corner. But this was different, a deliberate choice to step back into the world she'd abandoned when Danny died. "Would you be willing to sing something for me now? Just you and the mic, whatever song feels right," and even the sound engineer wiping away a tear. Elena's tone was gentle but direct. "But talent like yours shouldn't stay buried. Raw, honest emotion that reaches right into the listener's soul." She smiled, a genuine, warm expression. "We have a lot to talk about." Ms. Elena handed her a business card. "Call me when you're ready. The offer has no expiration date." Monroe. "I'd like to offer you a chance to record a demo with my team. It was overwhelming, but exhilarating, like waking up from a long sleep to find the world more vibrant than remembered." Lucas smiled. "But I'm glad I got to witness it." "Thank you for being here. I couldn't have done it without you." Neither noticed the photographer discreetly capturing their smiling faces from across the street or the sleek black car idling at the corner, Richard Beck watching through tinted windows as his son chose a path that led away from everything he had planned. No strings attached, no contracts yet, just a chance to see what we might create together. "Emergency board meeting tomorrow." Lucas ran a hand through his hair. "He's making his move." His father's name flashed on the screen. Lucas considered ignoring it, but after a moment's hesitation, he answered, "You have something special, a raw, emotional quality that can't be manufactured." Lucas's jaw tightened. "He's been planning this since he saw us together at the event. The magazine article just gave him the ammunition he needed." "You were incredible," he whispered into her hair. "I'm so proud of you." "Lucas, this is your life's work we're talking about, your family legacy." And suddenly Sarai knew what she wanted to sing. "What we have, what I feel for you, that's real. More real than quarterly profits or shareholder value. Then you make the choice that's right for you. Not for me, not for him. For you. There has to be a way for you to have both. What choice I will make if it comes to that." A pause. "I suggest you come prepared to make some difficult choices, Lucas. Show him that your personal life doesn't affect your ability to run the company." She sang for Danny, for Lucas, for herself, for all the pain and loss and unexpected joy of the past few weeks. "You didn't give me much choice, Father." He gestured to the folders in front of each board member. "As you all know, I announced my intention to retire last week, with Lucas taking over as chairman as well as CEO. However, recent events have raised concerns about leadership stability." Whatever happened at the board meeting tomorrow, they both knew nothing would be the same afterward. You're either an asset or a liability, and he's decided you're the latter. Richard slid a tablet toward the center of the table, displaying the magazine article about Lucas and Sarai. "My son is currently involved with a server, a woman with no education, no family connections, and apparently ambitions to be a singer. And now I've learned that Ms. Monroe is pursuing a recording contract with Elena Maxwell. Richard, with all due respect, I'm not sure why your son's personal life is relevant to this discussion. Beckman Group has seen record profits under Lucas's leadership." Her voice was hesitant at first, rusty from disuse, but as the familiar melody flowed through her, something inside Sarai came alive again. "There's nowhere else I'd rather be." "Image matters," Lucas asked quietly, his voice cutting through the chatter. "Stability matters. Some wouldn't meet his eyes. Others looked embarrassed by the naked power play they were witnessing. As Lucas held her, Sarai felt something shift inside her, a loosening of the tight knot of grief and guilt she'd carried for 3 years, not a connection to the entertainment industry and the tabloid coverage that comes with it. For 10 years, I have given everything to Beckman Group. I've expanded our market share, doubled our profits, and built a team that's the envy of the industry. I've done everything asked of me and more. Lucas's voice was steady, controlled. But I will not let this company dictate who I love. Eleanor Maxwell was already there, a stylish woman in her 50s, with silver-streaked dark hair and keen eyes that missed nothing, asked Michael Chen, another board member. My father is attempting to use his position to control my personal life, not because Sarai Monroe would harm this company, she wouldn't, but because she doesn't fit his narrow definition of who I should be with. I will continue to serve as CEO of Beckman Group as long as the board wishes me to. I think we need to discuss this as a board, without either Beck present. But I will not end my relationship with Sarai Monroe. Not for you, not for this company, not for anything. How had his father learned about that so quickly? Many executives have partners with their own careers. Very well, Lucas and I will step out while you deliberate. The meeting with Elena had only happened yesterday, but it was true, he loved her. Then we'll walk out and go get ice cream, no pressure. The entire board was present, 12 men and women in expensive suits, all watching him with varying degrees of curiosity and concern. His father sat at the head of the table, impeccably dressed as always, his expression unreadable. Lucas can take over as chairman, with my full support, on one condition, that he end his relationship with Ms. Monroe and announce his engagement to someone more suitable for the Beckman name. For the first time since losing Danny, she was allowing herself to hope again, to dream again. Whatever came next, with Lucas, with her music, with their complicated lives, they would face it together. The next day, Sarai stood nervously outside Elena Maxwell's sleek downtown studio, clutching Lucas's hand like a lifeline. What if I can't do it anymore? Lucas squeezed her hand reassuringly. His calm confidence steadied her. Together, they entered the building, where a receptionist led them to a spacious room with state-of-the-art recording equipment. Sarai Monroe, she said, extending her hand. I've been hoping to meet you. I'm just here for moral support, Lucas said, stepping back. Elena nodded approvingly. Good man. Now, Sarai, I'll get right to the point. Thank you, Sarai said, feeling overwhelmed by the praise. I understand you've been on a hiatus from music for personal reasons. Sarai glanced at Lucas, who gave her an encouraging nod. Sometimes a break can deepen an artist's perspective. Sarai felt panic rise in her chest. It was one thing to sing in a moment of desperation at the gala, but then she caught Lucas's eye. He smiled at her, a smile full of belief and something that looked a lot like love. She moved to the microphone, took a deep breath, and began to sing Bridge Over Troubled Water, Danny's favorite song, the one they used to sing together when times were tough. She closed her eyes, letting the music carry her, no longer fighting the emotions, but channeling them into each note. When she finished, the room was silent. Sarai opened her eyes to find Elena watching her intently, Lucas looking at her with undisguised awe. That, Elena said finally, is what I'm talking about. What followed was a whirlwind conversation about possibilities, recording sessions, potential songs, the kind of sound Elena envisioned for Sarai. I'll need some time to think about all this, Sarai said finally. Of course. As they left the studio, Lucas pulled Sarai into a hug. Sarai looked up at him, feeling lighter than she had in years. Yes, you could have. They walked hand in hand through the busy streets, discussing possibilities, making plans, both of them caught up in the excitement of new beginnings. That evening, as Lucas was leaving Sarai's apartment after celebrating her successful audition, his phone rang. Father, there's an emergency board meeting tomorrow morning at 8. Richard's voice was cold, controlled. Your presence is required. What's this about? Your future with the company, and the conditions of my retirement. The line went dead before Lucas could respond. He stared at the phone, a sense of foreboding settling over him. What is it? Sarai asked, seeing his expression. My father. What does that mean? It means he's probably going to force me to choose, you or the company. Sarai felt a cold knot form in her stomach. It's a company, Sarai. Just a company. Lucas took her hands. You don't have to choose, Sarai said, though part of her feared it wasn't true. Lucas smiled sadly. Not with my father in the picture. He sees the world in black and white. Then prove him wrong. Sarai squared her shoulders. Go to that meeting tomorrow. Fight for what you've built. And if he forces an ultimatum? Sarai hesitated, the words sticking in her throat. Lucas pulled her close, kissing her deeply. I already know what choice I'd make. Don't say it, Sarai whispered against his lips. Not yet. Wait until after tomorrow. Lucas nodded, holding her tightly as if afraid she might disappear. The boardroom of Beckman Group headquarters was oppressively silent as Lucas entered the next morning. Lucas, Richard nodded slightly. Thank you for joining us. Lucas took his seat at the opposite end of the table. Richard smiled thinly. Choices are exactly what we're here to discuss today. One of the board members, Janet Wilkins, spoke up. Hey, it's not about profits, Janet. It's about public perception and long-term stability. Lucas felt anger rise in his chest. Her name is Sarai Monroe, and I'd appreciate it if you'd speak of her with respect. The point, Richard continued, as if Lucas hadn't spoken, is that this relationship has already generated publicity that distracts from our corporate message. Lucas froze. I still don't see the problem, Janet said. The problem, Richard said coldly, is that a CEO's spouse reflects on the company. Beckman Group needs stability, respectability. So what exactly are you proposing? Richard looked directly at Lucas. I'm proposing that we make my retirement conditional. The room erupted in murmurs. Lucas sat perfectly still, his face expressionless, though inside he was seething. You can't be serious, Janet said. That's completely inappropriate. It's completely practical, Richard countered. Beckman Group is a family business. And if I refuse? Richard's expression hardened. Then I will remain as chairman and recommend to the board that we reconsider your position as CEO. The silence that followed was deafening. Lucas looked around the table, seeing the uncomfortable expressions of the board members. Slowly, Lucas stood up. Let me be clear about what's happening here. Lucas, Richard began, but Lucas held up a hand. I'm not finished. The word hung in the air. Love. Lucas realized he'd never said it before, not to Sarai, not even to himself. This is business, not personal, Richard said coldly. No, father. This is entirely personal. Lucas straightened his tie. So let me make my position clear. Janet Wilkins cleared her throat. Richard looked like he wanted to object, but after a moment he nodded stiffly. In the hallway, outside the boardroom, father and son stood several feet apart, neither speaking. The silence stretched uncomfortably until finally Richard broke it. You're making a mistake, he said quietly. This girl won't last. They never do. Her name is Sarai, Lucas said, his voice tight with controlled anger. And you're wrong about her, just like you're wrong about what matters in life. Richard scoffed. What matters? I built this company from nothing. Happiness is a luxury, not a right. My father taught me that, and I taught you. When was the last time you were happy, father? Truly happy, not just satisfied with a business deal or a stock price? Gave you every advantage, every opportunity. And this is how you repay me? By throwing it all away for some waitress with a pretty voice? Lucas's voice softened slightly. I don't want to fight you. While we appreciate your concerns, Richard, the board feels that Lucas's personal life is his own business, provided it doesn't affect company performance. Thank you for your confidence, he said to the board. I won't let you down. The board may be willing to overlook your poor judgment for now, but eventually they'll see I was right. Richard will step down as chairman, and Lucas will assume the position, effective immediately. He had won this battle, but at what cost to their already strained relationship? My father is stepping down. I don't want to choose between the company and Sarai, but if you force me to, you won't like my choice. We've never been close, but this feels like a final break. I'm not throwing anything away. I'm finally choosing something for myself instead of living the life you planned for me." Lucas looked directly at his father. The question seemed to catch Richard off guard. For a moment, something flickered across his face, an old pain quickly masked. "Well, maybe it's time to break that cycle." "And Sarai?" Lucas took a deep breath. "Thank you for giving me something worth fighting for. It's about the kind of man I want to be, the kind of life I want to live." Lucas paused. "Can I see you tonight? I have something important to tell you." "Because I want to." Sarai's eyes widened, and for a moment she didn't speak. Lucas took her hand. "Because I love you. I never wanted to come between you and your family." Before Richard could respond, the boardroom door opened. Janet Wilkins gestured for them to return. "We've reached a decision," she said once everyone was seated again. "I think I have since you showed up at that burger place, trying so hard to be normal." "I have something to show you," he said, putting the car in drive. "A surprise." Richard's face darkened. "This is unacceptable." Lucas slammed on his brakes, narrowly avoiding a collision. The SUV sped away, but not before Lucas caught a glimpse of the driver, one of his father's security team. The confrontation with his father had been painful, but necessary. "I've been renting that penthouse downtown because it's what was expected of me." "Lucas, I don't know what to say." The house was empty but full of potential. Hardwood floors, large windows, a small backyard visible through French doors. Close to work, impressive address, all that. But this, he gestured to the house. "This feels more like a home. Find out everything you can about this Elena Maxwell and Sarai Monroe's singing career. I want leverage." For the first time in his adult life, he had chosen his own path, regardless of what Richard Beck thought was best. "No, my son has made his choice. Now he'll learn the consequences." Lucas smiled. "But I want you to know that when I think about my future now, I see you in it." They developed an easy rhythm together. Lucas working on his laptop while Sarai practiced new songs, quiet dinners at home away from prying eyes, weekends exploring parts of the city neither had taken the time to appreciate before. And I see a life that's about more than just the company. Without his father's shadow looming over every decision, he found a new energy for the work, implementing changes he'd wanted for years but never had the authority to pursue. "He's stubborn, but he's still my father." But she kept these doubts to herself, not wanting to add to Lucas's worry. With Elena Maxwell's guidance, Sarai recorded a demo that captured the raw emotion of her voice. Lucas asked, changing the subject. To her astonishment, 3 major labels expressed interest, leading to a bidding war that ended with Sarai signing a contract with Harmony Records. "I can fly out on weekends, meet you in different cities. You can't just take off whenever you want." Lucas grinned. One of the perks of being the boss. As she got into the car, Lucas leaned over and kissed her gently. The 6-month tour would take her across the country, a dream opportunity, but one that would mean long stretches away from Lucas. "I'll call Elena tomorrow and tell her I'm in." "Furthermore," Janet continued, "we've voted to proceed with the transition plan as originally discussed. The first single, Walls Down, was already getting radio play and positive reviews. One more time from the bridge, and I think we've got it." As she prepared to sing again, she noticed Elena frowning at her phone. Sarai still couldn't quite believe that her music, songs born from her grief and healing, was actually reaching people. "Think about a future where you pursue your music. I run the company my way, not my father's, and we build something real together." Sarai had finally told Lucas everything about her sister. The good times, the struggles, the overwhelming guilt she'd carried since the accident. With each sharing, the burden lightened a little more. Paparazzi lurked outside restaurants and Sarai's workplaces, hoping for candid shots. Eleanor shook her head. "Probably nothing. Let's continue." After the board meeting, he had disappeared from public view, stepping away from the company completely. Eleanor hesitated. "It's probably nothing, but I need to hear it from you directly. The email claims you were involved in some legal troubles in Philadelphia before moving to DC. Something about stolen demo tapes from a recording studio." Lucas had reached out several times, hoping for reconciliation, but his calls went unanswered. It was as if his father had simply vanished from their lives. "You can have both." The message was brief but detailed, claiming that Sarai had stolen demo recordings from a small Philadelphia studio in 2020, just before moving to DC. It even included the name of the studio owner, Mark Johnson, someone Sarai had indeed worked with briefly. Emergency board meetings were rarely routine, especially given the tension with Richard. "We can have both." The emails seemed like a smear attempt, but in this business, we have to check everything. Lucas kissed the top of her head. He hadn't told her about the strange incidents of the past few weeks, the feeling of being watched, the anonymous emails questioning his judgment, the whispers among certain board members. "What? That's absurd. I've never stolen anything in my life." He didn't want to dampen her excitement with his suspicions that his father might be working behind the scenes to undermine him. "Say yes to the tour. Your sister would want you to." Elena frowned. Very specific for a fabrication. But together they weathered the intrusion, finding strength in each other when the outside world became too much. Lucas kept his expression neutral, though inside he felt a surge of vindication. "This isn't over," Richard said quietly as the meeting adjourned. Lucas watched his father leave, feeling a mixture of triumph and sadness. As soon as he could get away, Lucas called Sarai. "It's done," he told her. "The board sided with me." "Lucas, that's wonderful." Sarai's voice was warm with relief. "How are you feeling? Honestly? Exhausted? Relieved? A little sad?" Lucas sighed. "My father and I'm sorry," Sarai said softly. "You didn't. This is about much more than just you and me." "Of course, I finish at Rossini's at 7. I'll pick you up." That evening, as Lucas drove to meet Sarai, he felt a strange mixture of emotions. He was so lost in thought that he almost missed the black SUV that pulled out too quickly from a side street, cutting him off. A warning? A coincidence? Lucas couldn't be sure, but a sense of unease settled over him as he continued toward Rossini's. Sarai was waiting outside the restaurant, her face lighting up when she saw him. "What was that for?" she asked, smiling. "Because I can." The words hung in the air between them. "How you don't have to say it back," Lucas said quickly. "I know it's fast, I just wanted you to know." Sarai touched his face gently. "I love you too," she whispered. Lucas laughed, feeling lighter than he had in days. He drove them to a quiet neighborhood near Rock Creek Park, stopping in front of a small but charming house set back from the street. "What is this place?" Sarai asked as they got out of the car. "It's mine. Or it could be." Lucas led her up the walkway. He unlocked the door and showed Sarai inside. "It's beautiful," Sarai said, turning in a slow circle to take it all in. "But why are you showing me this?" Lucas took both her hands in his. "Because I want you to help me decide if it's right. For us." Sarai stilled. "Us? I'm not proposing. Not yet. That would be too fast, even for me." Tears welled in Sarai's eyes. "You don't have to say anything right now. Just think about it." He pulled her close. Sarai rested her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "It sounds like a dream. It can be real, if we want it badly enough." As they stood there in the empty house that held so much promise, neither of them saw the car parked across the street, or Richard Beck watching through binoculars, his expression cold with determination. He picked up his phone and dialed a number. "It's time to move to Plan B," he said when the call connected. The voice on the other end asked a question, and Richard's mouth tightened into a thin line. 3 months passed in a whirlwind of change for both Sarai and Lucas. Meanwhile, Lucas settled into his dual role as CEO and chairman of Beckman Group. Their relationship deepened amid these professional successes. Lucas bought the house he'd shown Sarai, and though she kept her own apartment, she spent most nights with him. It wasn't perfect. The press continued to follow them, dubbing them Beauty and the Billionaire. The only shadow over their happiness was Richard Beck. "He'll come around eventually," Lucas told Sarai one evening as they sat in their favorite spot in the backyard, watching fireflies blink in the growing darkness. Sarai wasn't so sure. There had been something in Richard's eyes that day in the car, a cold calculation that suggested he wasn't one to forgive or forget. "Have you decided about the tour?" Sarai sighed. Her label wanted her to open for Janelle Carter, one of the biggest names in music and another of Elena's discoveries. "I'm still thinking about it," she admitted. "It's an amazing chance, but you're worried about us." Lucas finished her thought, squeezing her hand. "Don't be. We'll make it work. You're the chairman now. Watch me." Sarai laughed, leaning against his shoulder. "I never thought I'd have this problem, choosing between a music tour and staying close to the man I love." "It's not a choice, Sarai." The mention of Danny brought the familiar ache, but now it was tempered with something like peace. "You're right," she said finally. Lucas smiled, though Sarai didn't see the flicker of worry that crossed his face. The next morning, Sarai was at the recording studio, working with Elena on arrangements for the songs that would make up her debut EP. "That was perfect," Elena said after Sarai finished a take. Sarai nodded, adjusting her headphones. "Everything okay?" Sarai asked. "Just a strange email." They worked for another hour before taking a break. While Elena stepped out to take a call, Sarai checked her own phone and found a message from Lucas. "Emergency board meeting called for tomorrow. Don't worry, probably routine. Still on for dinner tonight? Love you." Sarai texted back a quick confirmation, trying to ignore the unease that settled in her stomach. When Eleanor returned, her expression was troubled. "Sarai, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest with me." "Of course, what's wrong?" "I received an email this morning containing some concerning information about you." Sarai stared at her in shock. "That's what I thought." Eleanor looked relieved. "Who sent it?" "Anonymous. But they included details about the studio, dates, even the name of the supposed victim." A cold feeling crept up Sarai's spine. "Can I see the email?" Elena handed over her phone. "This is completely false," Sarai said, her voice shaking slightly. "I know Mark. We recorded a few demos together before Danny died, but I never stole anything." Elena took back her phone. "But someone is clearly trying to cause trouble." "I believe you." Sarai thought immediately of Richard Beck. Who else would have motivation to dig into her past and fabricate stories? But how would he know about Mark Johnson, a connection from years ago? "You think it's Richard Beck, don't you?" "Who else would have the resources to dig this deep and the motivation to hurt me?" "I'm going to call Mark right now," Sarai said, pulling out her own phone. "He can confirm this is nonsense." A quick internet search revealed that the studio had closed down over a year ago and Mark Johnson had moved to Los Angeles. "I'll handle any fallout." But when she dialed the number she still had for the small studio, a recording informed her the number was no longer in service. If Richard Beck was truly determined to separate her from Lucas, he wouldn't stop at a single false accusation. "This is crazy," Sarai muttered. "Someone is deliberately trying to sabotage me." The first indication she had that she wasn't alone was a voice behind her. Not Lucas Ayres, but one she recognized immediately. She needed to tell him about the email, to warn him that his father might be making moves against them both. He looked older than when she'd last seen him, more tired, but his eyes were as cold and calculating as ever. "Beck." Sarai tried to keep her voice steady. "How did you get in here?" Elena studied her face carefully. Sarai hesitated, then nodded. "This house belonged to my family before Lucas bought it." Richard moved further into the kitchen. "I believe we have some unfinished business. If you're here to threaten me again, you're wasting your time. I'm not going anywhere." "He offered me $1 million to break up with Lucas. When that didn't work," Richard's voice dripped with disdain. "Do you really think a man like my son, educated at the finest schools, groomed for power since childhood, could be satisfied long-term with a server-turned-singer?" Richard's smile didn't reach his eyes. These were doubts she sometimes had herself in the dark hours of the night, when the differences between her world and Lucas's seemed insurmountable. "I never stole anything from Mark Johnson or anyone else. 6 months together, one whisper of impropriety, and suddenly record labels become nervous." Richard set down his glass. "The offer I made before still stands. $1 million, a clean break. You pursue your music career far away from Washington and my son. Everyone wins. Destroy my career if I don't leave Lucas?" But a father who, in his own twisted way, believed he was acting in his son's best interests. tour opportunities disappear. It would be a shame if your promising career ended before it truly began. Especially when his poor choices threaten everything I've built. He may think he loves you now, but eventually he'll see that I was right, that I was protecting him from making a mistake that would cost him everything. He needs your support, your respect. Quite impressive. You've lasted longer than most of Lucas's. The comfortable home she and Lucas had been creating together suddenly felt violated by Richard's presence, his threats hanging in the air. Came to light, well, that's hardly my fault. Distractions. It would be a pretty extreme move, even for a protective father. You don't know Richard Beck. Sarai ran a hand through her hair. Our family has a legacy to uphold. Sarai looked up at him, her eyes filled with worry. Lucas, he's not going to stop. The email to Elena, now this, he's determined to break us up. I'm going to put an end to this once and for all. Sarai took a step toward him, no longer intimidated. Lucas's expression darkened as Sarai explained about the false accusations. That son of a... Lucas knelt in front of her, taking both her hands in his. Sarai, I had a whole plan for this. A romantic dinner, music, the perfect setting, but right now I can't wait another day. But another part held back, Richard's words echoing in her mind. In his mind, I'm a threat to everything he's built, everything he wants for you. Lucas's gaze was steady, certain. I know it's fast. I know we come from different worlds. In that moment, all her doubts seemed to fade away. Whatever challenges they faced, from Richard, from their different backgrounds, from her budding music career, they would face them together. But some things you just know, deep in your soul. And I know that I want to spend my life with you. Lucas. When they finally broke apart, both were smiling through tears. Sarai? In fact, I've already arranged to work remotely for part of it, so I can join you in a few cities. I can't believe he would go this far. You've shown me what it means to live a full life, not just a successful one. He opened the box to reveal a stunning but understated diamond ring. I want to build a life with you, Sarai Monroe. Will you marry me? When was the last time you saw your son truly happy, Mr. Beck? Before me, I mean. A woman's voice, unfamiliar. Yes, of course. What can I do for you, Ms. Wilkins? This is Janet Wilkins from the Beckman Group Board. We met briefly at the company holiday party. Richard Beck called an emergency press conference for tomorrow morning. Janet's voice was grim. I've been trying to reach Lucas, but he's not answering his phone. He's refusing to tell anyone what it's about, but he's gathered some significant shareholder support over the past week. He's gathered allies, prepared statements. Whatever conversation Lucas thinks they're going to have, Richard is 10 steps ahead. She should have been purely happy, but worry about Lucas's confrontation with his father nagged at her. Richard Beck was not a man who admitted defeat easily. Eleanor's expression hardened. Well, I've dealt with worse than angry billionaires in this industry. Don't worry about this, Sarai. Focus on the music. Sarai parked quickly and ran through the rain to the imposing front door, which was slightly ajar. From inside, she could hear raised voices. His expression grew serious again. Lucas turned in surprise as she entered. Sarai moved to Lucas's side, taking his hand. She said Richard is planning something for... What are you doing here? The night was dark and rainy, making visibility poor as she navigated the winding roads leading to the massive home where Richard still lived. About my father. Lucas stood facing his father, surrounded by what appeared to be board members and company executives. On a large screen behind Richard was a presentation titled Leadership Transition Plan. Whatever was happening inside wasn't a private conversation between father and son. I'm going to handle him tonight. This has gone on long enough. But as Sarai returned to the booth to finish the session, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. That evening, Sarai arrived at the house earlier than planned, hoping to catch Lucas before he left the office. This is our home, our life. No more interference. The house was quiet when she entered, using the key Lucas had given her a month ago. She called out, but there was no answer. Lucas must still be at work, a world you will never truly understand or belong in. Richard reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. One last offer. $2 million, more than enough to start fresh somewhere new. Make the right choice for Lucas's sake, if not your own. Sarai decided to make dinner, needing the distraction of chopping vegetables and stirring sauces to calm her racing thoughts. She was so focused on her cooking that she didn't hear the front door open. Ms. Monroe. Sarai spun around to find Richard Beck standing in the kitchen doorway. Mister, I still have a key. Sarai set down the knife she'd been using to chop onions, keeping the island between them. So I've noticed. I'm not a distraction. No? Then what are you, Ms. Monroe? The love of his life, his future wife, the mother of the next generation of Becks? The words stung more than Sarai wanted to admit. What Lucas and I have is none of your business, she said firmly. Everything about my son is my business. Richard moved to pour himself a glass of water, acting as if he owned the place. Is that why you're spreading lies about me? That email to Elena Maxwell, that was you, wasn't it? Richard didn't deny it. I simply made some inquiries about your past. If certain concerns... They're lies, Sarai said through gritted teeth. Perhaps. Richard shrugged. But mud sticks, Ms. Monroe, especially in the entertainment industry. The threat was clear. Sarai felt a chill run through her. So that's your plan? I prefer to think of it as realigning incentives. Except Lucas. Lucas will recover. Men always do. Richard's expression softened slightly, showing a glimpse of genuine concern. Sarai studied Richard's face, seeing for the first time not just a cold manipulator. You really don't understand him at all, do you? She said quietly. Lucas doesn't need your protection. What he needs is to remember his responsibilities. Richard's voice hardened again. The Beckman name means something in this town. A legacy of what? Money? Power? What about happiness? The question seemed to catch Richard off guard. For a moment, uncertainty flickered across his face. Happiness is fleeting, he said finally. Success endures. That's a lonely way to live. It's the way of our world, Ms. Monroe. He placed the envelope on the counter and turned to leave. At the doorway, he paused. I'll expect your answer by tomorrow. Choose wisely. After he left, Sarai stood frozen in the kitchen, the envelope sitting untouched on the counter like a poisonous thing. When Lucas arrived an hour later, he found Sarai sitting at the kitchen table, dinner half prepared and abandoned, the envelope in front of her. He rushed to her side, concerned by her pale face. What's wrong? What's this? Your father was here, she said, her voice hollow. He came to make me another offer. Lucas stared at the envelope, then back at Sarai. He was in our home. How did he even get in? He still has a key, apparently. What email? He thinks he's protecting you. Sarai reached for Lucas's hand. It's not his decision to make. Lucas crumpled the envelope without opening it. How? By making it clear that you're not some temporary distraction. Sarai's breath caught as Lucas reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Lucas, I love you, he said simply, more than I thought it was possible to love anyone. Tears filled Sarai's eyes. Part of her wanted to say yes immediately, to throw her arms around him and accept the future he was offering. Lucas, are you sure? Your father... This isn't about my father. It's about us. Sarai looked into his eyes, seeing nothing but love and sincerity. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. Lucas slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into a kiss that felt like a promise. I should warn you, Sarai said. I'm still taking that tour, fiancé or not. Lucas laughed. I wouldn't have it any other way. You've thought of everything. I try. Do you want me to come with you? Lucas shook his head. This is something I need to do alone. But when I come back, we're changing the locks. After Lucas left, Sarai sat on the couch, admiring the ring on her finger and trying to process everything that had happened. Unable to sit still, she decided to call Tasha and share her news. But as she reached for her phone, it rang with an unknown number. Hello? She answered cautiously. Sarai Monroe? Sarai remembered her, the board member who had supported Lucas against his father. I thought you should know, so there's something happening at the company. Sarai felt her stomach drop. A press conference? About what? I don't know for certain, but rumors suggest he's going to try to force a vote to remove Lucas as CEO. He went to confront his father, Sarai said, her mind racing. Tonight. Then you need to warn him. Richard has been planning this for weeks. Thank you for telling me, Sarai said, already reaching for her keys. I'll find him. She tried calling Lucas repeatedly as she drove toward the Beck family estate, but each call went straight to voicemail. As she approached the gated entrance, Sarai saw multiple cars in the circular driveway. Not just Lucas's familiar Audi, but several others. The security guard at the gate recognized her from previous visits with Lucas and waved her through. Following the sound, she made her way to Richard's study, where she found a scene that made her blood run cold. Sarai? Janet Wilkins called me. Tomorrow, a press conference. Richard smiled thinly. Ms. Wilkins should learn to be more discreet. But since you're here, Ms. Monroe, perhaps you'd like to hear our discussion. It concerns you, after all. I came here to talk to you privately, and I find half the board and executive team waiting. As you can see, I've developed a comprehensive plan for leadership transition at Beckman Group. The board will vote tomorrow to reinstate me as CEO and chairman, with you taking a reduced role until certain conditions are met. What is this, Father? Lucas demanded. I thought it best to handle this efficiently. Richard gestured to the presentation. You can't do this, Lucas said, his voice dangerously quiet. The board already voted. You stepped down. Richard clicked to the next slide, which displayed financial projections. Richard's eyes flicked to Sarai, then back to Lucas. The board has a duty to consider all factors affecting company stability. So that's it? My father spends a few weeks whispering in your ears, and suddenly you're ready to throw me out? But the day-to-day leadership will return to me until you've refocused your priorities. As long as Lucas was with Sarai, his father would use every tool at his disposal to undermine him. Maybe Richard was right. Maybe their worlds really were too different to mesh. Our stock has dropped 12% since you took over as chairman. Investors are nervous about your leadership, your focus. Boards can change their minds when presented with new information. No, you're staying right here. This involves you too. That's a temporary market correction, and you know it. Our quarterly results exceeded projections. These are not actions of a fully committed CEO. Perhaps. But combined with concerns about your personal judgment, is this woman really worth losing everything you've built? Lucas, we're not questioning your abilities. You're brilliant at what you do. But there are concerns about distractions. One of the executives, a man Sarai didn't recognize, cleared his throat. Lucas's voice was calm but resolute. I've given this company everything. If he sold his shares, it would create massive market instability and potentially open the door for a hostile takeover. I won't give it the power to dictate my personal happiness too. You're right, Father, he said finally. This does require a choice. Distractions, Lucas repeated flatly. You mean my relationship with Sarai? Each of you has a choice to make tomorrow. Lucas took Sarai's hand, the diamond on her finger catching the light. I know she makes me happier than I've ever been. I know she challenges me to be better, not just more successful. I know she loves me for who I am, not what I represent. Lucas turned to Sarai. I came here tonight to tell you that Sarai and I are engaged. I was hoping, despite everything, that you might find it in yourself to be happy for me. Maybe it's time I built something of my own, something that reflects who I really am, not who my father wants me to be. To welcome her into our family. His expression hardened. Instead, I find you plotting behind my back again. Vote however your conscience dictates, but know this. If you choose to remove me as CEO because of who I love, you'll also lose me completely. Lucas leaned in to kiss her softly. The rest will sort itself out. Lucas started the engine but didn't immediately drive away. She had no idea what tomorrow would bring, whether Richard would back down or escalate his efforts, whether Lucas would truly have to choose between his family business and their relationship. Your son is happy for the first time in years. I've worked with Lucas for a decade and I've never seen him like this. Sarai, I meant what I said in there. You've shown me what really matters. If the cost of keeping you in my life is giving up Beckman Group, it's a price I'm willing to pay. Behind him, the board members and executives exchanged uncomfortable glances. Helen Beck had walked out on their family 20 years ago, leaving him to raise Lucas alone. Everything I've done has been for his future. The abandonment had hardened him, made him determined that his son would never be vulnerable to that kind of emotional devastation again. He moved to his desk and picked up a framed photograph. Himself, Helen, and a young Lucas, all smiling at a company picnic years ago. It was one of the few family photos he kept. The press conference tomorrow is cancelled. The vote is cancelled. No one moved to stop them as they walked through the grand hallway and out into the rainy night. Anyone who wants to discuss the future of Beckman Group can meet me in my office on Monday morning. For now, this meeting is over. No, I won't be changing my position on this. A pause. Well, that is surprising. Thank you for letting me know. Did you see his face when he said he'd walk away? He meant it, Richard. And then I met someone who showed me there's more to life than quarterly reports and stock prices. Someone who made me question what actually matters. His voice was tense but controlled, his business voice as she'd come to think of it. Sarai asked, sitting up. More problems with the board? Lucas reached for her hand, his thumb brushing over her engagement ring. But whatever his reasons, it gives us breathing room. She was halfway to the studio when her phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Time to figure out our next steps without a corporate crisis hanging over our heads. I know you think you're protecting Lucas from making the same mistakes, from experiencing the same pain. After last night, I'm not sure we have anything to discuss. Richard Beck didn't strike her as the type of man who simply gave up when thwarted. But you can't protect him from life, Richard, and you can't choose his happiness for him. Among other things, Richard said smoothly, your frequent absences from the office, your plans to work remotely during Ms. Monroe's upcoming tour. My father cancelled the press conference and the board vote. In 1 hour. Just you and me. Richard paused. Please don't tell Lucas. Not yet. About selling your shares, walking away from everything? His voice was different somehow. Less cold, more tired. 1 hour of your time, that's all I ask. Janet thinks our confrontation affected him more than he let on. Richard's voice was reflective. After his mother left, I promised myself I would make sure he never experienced, especially the part about me selling my shares and walking away completely. Lucas looked as confused as Sarai felt. Janet says he's gone a step further. He's transferring his remaining shares into a trust, with me as the sole beneficiary. Lucas straightened, addressing the entire room. I've spent my entire adult life trying to meet your expectations, trying to be the son and the CEO you wanted me to be. Without the trappings of wealth and power, he seemed older, more human. I gave everything to this company. My time, my energy, my youth. Well, Richard stared out at the reflecting pool. That's partly why I wanted to speak with you, to apologize. After everything you've done to try to separate me from Lucas. Lucas looked around the room, taking in the uncomfortable expressions of the people he had worked with for years. No one is throwing you out, Richard said. You'll remain on the board, retain your shares. I've spent the last 24 hours doing something I rarely do, questioning my own judgment, and I've come to the uncomfortable realization that I may have been wrong. The implication was clear. Sarai felt a wave of despair. This was exactly what she had feared, that loving her would cost Lucas everything he had worked for. She squeezed Lucas's hand, then let go. I should leave, she said quietly. Let you handle this. Lucas turned to her, his expression fierce. Lucas, be reasonable, Richard said. Lucas was silent for a long moment, looking from his father to the assembled executives, then finally to Sarai. His expression shifted from anger to something like clarity. You know what? Richard's face showed the first hint of triumph, quickly masked. I'm glad you're seeing reason. Oh, I'm seeing clearly for the first time in years. He moved to stand beside Sarai, taking her hand again. Lucas, don't be dramatic, Richard said, but there was a hint of uncertainty in his voice now. I'm not being dramatic, I'm being honest. Lucas looked around the room. What does that mean? Asked one of the board members. It means I'll sell my shares, all of them, walk away from Beckman Group entirely. Silence fell over the room. The threat was significant. Lucas owned nearly 20% of Beckman Group. "You wouldn't," Richard said, but he sounded less certain. "Try me." Richard looked genuinely stunned by the engagement announcement. For the first time, Sarai saw something like doubt cross his face. "You barely know her," he said, but his voice had lost some of its conviction. "I know everything that matters." He turned to address the room again. Without waiting for a response, Lucas led Sarai out of the study. Once they were in Lucas's car, Sarai finally spoke. "Did you mean that?" "Every word." "But it's your legacy, your life's work." "No, it's my father's legacy. My life's work is still ahead of me." Lucas smiled, touching her cheek gently. Sarai leaned into his touch, overwhelmed by the depth of his commitment. "What happens now?" "Now we go home, change the locks, and start planning our future. Together." As they drove away from the Beck estate, Sarai looked back at the imposing house growing smaller in the distance. But for the first time since meeting Lucas Beck, she felt certain about one thing. Whatever challenges they faced, they would face them as partners, equals bound by something stronger than wealth or status or family expectations. Inside the house, Richard Beck stood at the window, watching his son's car disappear down the long driveway. "Is this really worth it, Richard?" Janet Wilkins asked, coming to stand beside him. "He's infatuated," Richard said, but there was less conviction in his voice. "It won't last." "Maybe not. But destroying your relationship with him over this? That definitely won't last either." Janet's voice softened. Richard remained silent, still staring out at the now empty driveway. The rain had intensified, reflecting his darkening mood. "I've known you a long time," Janet continued, "since before Helen left." The mention of his ex-wife's name made Richard flinch slightly. "I built Beckman Group for him," Richard said quietly. "Then let him have a future he actually wants." Janet touched his arm briefly. "Before you lose him completely." One by one, the executives and board members filed out, leaving Richard alone with his thoughts. For the first time in decades, Richard Beck wondered if he might be wrong. The next morning, Sarai woke to the sound of Lucas on the phone in the next room. "I understand." "Yes, that's correct." When he returned to the bedroom, his expression was unreadable. "What is it?" "Actually, no." Lucas sat on the edge of the bed. "That was Janet Wilkins." "He what?" "Cancelled everything. Sent an email to the entire board at 6 this morning saying he's decided to honor his retirement and respect the board's previous decision." Sarai stared at him. "I don't understand. Last night he was ready to take everything away from you." "I know, it doesn't make sense." Lucas ran a hand through his hair. "Do you think he's genuinely backing down, or is this some kind of strategy?" "With my father, it's hard to tell." Sarai squeezed his hand, relieved but still wary. Later that morning, as Lucas left for an unavoidable meeting at the office, Sarai decided to use her unexpected free day to visit Eleanor and discuss plans for the tour. "Hello." "Ms. Monroe, Richard Beck. I was hoping we might meet." Sarai nearly dropped the phone in surprise. "I believe we do. It concerns Lucas's future, and yours." Every instinct told Sarai to refuse, to hang up and call Lucas immediately, but curiosity won out. "Where?" "The Lincoln Memorial." Sarai hesitated. 1 hour. That's it. An hour later, she found Richard Beck sitting on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, looking strangely ordinary in casual clothes, khakis and a sweater instead of his usual impeccable suit. "Thank you for coming," he said as she approached. "I'm not sure why I did," Sarai admitted, sitting beside him but keeping a careful distance. Yes. Of all the things Sarai had expected, an apology wasn't one of them. "I'm sorry?" "You heard correctly." Richard turned to look at her directly. Sarai stayed silent, waiting for him to continue. "I've always believed I knew what was best for Lucas. What would make him successful, secure. That kind of loss again. I thought the way to do that was to make him strong, impervious to emotional vulnerability. By teaching him that love is a weakness," Sarai said quietly, by teaching him to prioritize what can't be taken away. Success, achievement, respect. Richard sighed. But last night, when he said he would walk away from everything we've built together rather than give you up, I saw something in him I haven't seen since he was a child. Certainty, passion, real happiness. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, worn photograph. This was Lucas's mother, Helen. Sarai took the photo carefully. It showed a beautiful woman with Lucas's eyes and smile, looking at the camera with a warmth that Richard Beck had never displayed. She was a singer too, you know, Richard said, surprising Sarai. Not professionally, but she had a beautiful voice. Lucas used to fall asleep every night to her singing. I didn't know that, Sarai said softly, handing back the photograph. Lucas never mentioned it. Richard tucked the photo away. Perhaps that's another reason I reacted so strongly to you. You reminded me of her, not in looks but in that same fire, that same unwillingness to be molded into someone else's idea of who you should be. He probably doesn't remember. He was only 9 when she left. Lucas's position is secure. Sarai didn't know how to respond. This vulnerable, reflective version of Richard Beck was so at odds with the cold manipulator she had encountered before. Richard turned back to her. I don't expect us to become friends, Ms. Monroe. Sarai. There's too much history now, but I am asking for a chance to try again. To be part of my son's life and by extension yours. Richard hesitated, seeming almost nervous. Would you consider helping me? Lucas trusts you. He might be more willing to give me another chance if you think I deserve one. Why are you telling me this? Instead, she saw only weary regret and cautious hope. Because I want you to understand. Richard met her gaze directly. Whatever my past feelings, I can see how happy you make my son. I didn't oppose your relationship with Lucas because I thought you weren't good enough. Richard's expression softened slightly. However, I've realized something important. But if you're genuinely trying to make amends, I won't stand in the way. What mattered was giving Lucas the chance to rebuild his relationship with his father, if that's what he wanted. His reaction was a mixture of shock, suspicion, and cautious hope. In trying to protect Lucas from pain, I've been causing him pain. In trying to ensure he never lost someone he loved, I was on the verge of losing him myself. And he certainly doesn't back down once he's set on a course of action. I opposed it because I was afraid he would experience the same devastating loss I did when Helen left. He sat beside Sarai on the couch. After she was gone, it was like he froze, like he decided emotions were too dangerous. I'm not going to leave him, Sarai said firmly. I have these vague memories of music at bedtime, but I thought maybe I'd imagined them. He was quiet for a moment. One step at a time. It might make a nice venue for a summer wedding, if you're interested. Maybe start with coffee. It's strange, but Sarai and I were thinking of something smaller, more intimate. Just a thought. Richard nodded, accepting the gentle rejection without offense. Whatever you decide, I'd like to be there, if you'll have me. 6 weeks apart would be their longest separation since meeting. I haven't thought about my mother in years. We'd like that, he said, reaching for Sarai's hand under the table. My father made it clear the subject was off limits. Perhaps not, but life offers no guarantees. Did you know she used to sing to you? Lucas smiled, taking her hand. Actually, I was thinking about my father. Lucas squeezed her hand. You have that effect on people, Sarai Monroe. You make them remember what matters. About forgiveness. About how sometimes people can surprise you. Only 30 guests attended. Close friends, a few colleagues, and family. Richard Beck sat in the front row, his expression one of genuine happiness as he watched his son marry the woman who had changed both their lives. Lucas smiled, touching her cheek gently. Your voice was always there. And when it came time for their first dance, Sarai surprised Lucas by singing to him. A song she had written about finding love when you've stopped looking for it. Richard approached, offering her a glass of champagne. I'm learning. Slowly, perhaps, but learning nonetheless. He raised his glass. To new beginnings. About walls coming down and hearts opening up. You just needed to remember how to use it. Sarai reached up to touch his face. It was like waking up, like remembering who I was supposed to be. If he's genuinely making an effort, I owe it to both of us to meet him halfway. He smiled slightly. Besides, he's going to be your father-in-law. We should at least aim for civil family dinners. Someone who isn't afraid to sing, to love, to live. She stretched up to kiss him. Someone who knows that some songs are worth the risk. All he needed was the freedom to be himself, to be seen, to be heard. Sarai looked back at the house filled with friends and family. 3 years ago, she had lost the person who mattered most to her, had closed herself off from music and love and possibility. Now, against all odds, she had found her voice again, in her music, in her heart, and in the love of a man who saw her for exactly who she was. The conversation was initially strained, with long silences and careful small talk. It wasn't about wealth or status, or even music in the end. You know, I never thought I'd say this, but I think meeting you changed him too, not just me. Sarai looked up at the man who had entered her life on a winter night and changed everything. When I was serving drinks at the Westfall Gala, if someone had told me I'd be here now, with a husband, a record deal, and your father actually smiling at me, I would have said they were crazy. But gradually, as Richard made visible efforts to engage with Sarai about her music and asked genuine questions about their wedding plans, the atmosphere softened. Last week, he started again. He's rusty, but it's coming back to him. I thought you should know. Sarai took his hand. You know, when I first saw you on that stage, singing without accompaniment, something in me recognized something in you, like I'd been waiting my whole life to hear that voice. Lucas would join her in Los Angeles in 2 weeks, and they had video calls planned for every day in between. So proud of what you're doing, of who you are. What do you want to do about your father? He stood up, looking out over the mall. I've cancelled the board vote. I've stepped away from the company completely. Why the sudden change? Had Richard Beck truly had a change of heart? Or was this another strategy, a more subtle approach to achieving the same goal? Because for the first time in 20 years, I'm trying to be a father instead of a business partner. Sarai studied his face, looking for signs of manipulation or insincerity. That's not my decision to make, she said finally. That's between you and Lucas. I know, and I'll speak to him, but I wanted to speak to you first, to apologize for my actions and to ask... The request caught Sarai off guard. Richard Beck, asking for her help. It seemed almost impossible. I can't promise anything, she said carefully. That's all I can ask for. Richard nodded slightly. Thank you for meeting with me, and congratulations on your engagement. As he turned to leave, Sarai called after him. Mr. Beck, Lucas is playing piano again. Richard stopped, looking back in surprise. He told me he used to play as a child, but stopped after his mother left, Sarai continued. Something like genuine emotion crossed Richard's face. Thank you for telling me, he said softly, before walking away. Sarai sat on the steps for a long time after he left, trying to process the conversation. In the end, she decided that his sincerity wasn't for her to judge. That evening, when Lucas returned home, Sarai told him about the meeting. It's hard to believe, he said, pacing the living room. My father doesn't apologize, he doesn't admit mistakes. People can change, Sarai suggested. Maybe seeing how far you were willing to go, giving up the company rather than giving up us, made him realize how much he was risking. Lucas stopped pacing, his expression thoughtful. When I was a kid, before my mother left, he was different, warmer, more patient. He showed me a picture of her, Sarai said. Lucas looked surprised. Maybe that's changing too. Lucas considered the question carefully. I think I want to try. Sarai laughed. 2 weeks later, as Sarai prepared to leave for the first leg of her tour with Janelle Carter, the three of them met for lunch at a quiet restaurant near the Beckman Group headquarters. I was thinking, Richard said as they were finishing dessert, the house in the Hamptons has been sitting empty for years. Lucas looked at his father in surprise. The Hamptons house had been his mother's favorite place, and after she left, Richard had never returned there. That's Very generous, Lucas said carefully. Of course. The simple request, made without demand or expectation, seemed to affect Lucas deeply. Later that day, as Lucas drove Sarai to the airport for the first stop on her tour, she noticed he seemed lost in thought. "Second thoughts about me leaving?" she asked, only half joking. "No. He seems to be trying." "He is, and that's unexpected." Lucas glanced at her. "How so?" "You made him remember what it was like before my mother left, when he still believed in things beyond business success." At the airport, their goodbye was emotional but not sad. "I'm proud of you," Lucas said, holding her close. "I couldn't have done it without you," Sarai replied. "You helped me find my voice again in every way." No. 6 months later, on a perfect summer day, Sarai Monroe and Lucas Beck were married in a small ceremony in the garden of their home. Danny's photograph had a place of honor beside the altar, a way for Sarai to include her sister in the most important day of her life. As the evening wound down, Sarai found herself standing alone for a moment, watching Lucas laugh with Tasha and Marcus by the small dance floor. "I've never seen him so happy," Richard said, nodding toward his son. "You did that." "We did it together," Sarai corrected gently. Richard nodded, acknowledging the subtle rebuke. Sarai clinked her glass against his. "To family." Later that night, as they prepared to leave for their honeymoon, Lucas pulled Sarai aside for a moment of privacy. "Happy?" he asked, his arms around her waist. "More than I ever thought possible." Lucas laughed. "Life has a way of surprising you." His expression grew more serious. "I know the feeling." "And who is that?" Lucas asked softly. Sarai smiled, thinking of Danny, of the dreams they had shared, of the difficult journey that had led her here. As they drove away, heading toward the next chapter of their lives together, some people might call it a fairy tale, the server and the billionaire, finding love across the divide of their different worlds. But Sarai knew better. It was about two people who had been hiding from life in different ways, finding in each other the courage to stop hiding, to sing their own song, together. The end.